Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Newhouse from the Choral Stream, and we're here celebrating the release of a gorgeous new CD called The Hope of Loving. It's by Jake Runestad, and his first compact disc, his first recording of all his choral music, or devoted exclusively to his choral music, sung by a fantastic choir, Conspirare, and Craig Hella Johnson is the conductor. It comes out on Friday, August 9th, and so we have got a little bit of time with the man of the hour here, Mr. Jake himself, and to talk about the CD, to sneak peek some audio, and talk about how it came to be made and what it means to you as a composer to have your first all-Runestad CD, which must be pretty cool. So congratulations right off the top.
Thank you. It's such a thrill, and it's been a lifelong dream to work with Conspirare. You know, I remember as a student thinking, oh my gosh, it would be incredible for them to just perform a piece someday, and now to have this whole album, it's phenomenal. It's such a joy.
Hit it out of the park. Yeah. Going from the idea of just sing one piece.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So. And we've got copies of the CD. If you'd like to register for it, you can come to this address, classicalmpr.org/choral, and we're going to be giving away The Hope of Loving. And greetings to a lot of different audiences for this. We're partnering with the American Choral Directors Association, Conspirare itself, and the label Delos, and several others in association with the Choral Stream. So I'm glad everybody's tuned in. And if you've got some comments or questions as we go along, just chime in on the comments, and we'll do our best to get to them. Jake, the first piece, track one, this is starts off so ethereally and then builds, but for you, the music, but for you, the composer, how did this one start in this particular text?
Yeah, so the opening piece is called Waves, and this is the very first collaboration that I had with a friend of mine who is an incredible poet named Todd Boss. And Todd and I had known each other for a few years and then decided that we should probably collaborate. Huh. And so I remember sitting down and talking about what makes a good text for music. And so we hashed out all the details, and then Todd went and wrote this beautiful poem. And Waves is I think the story of someone who goes to the ocean and is maybe standing on a cliff or at the beach and is overlooking the water and is contemplating their life and trying to look for meaning when they're in a difficult place. And so musically, I tried to find that emotional feeling, that emotional sound, and also to paint waves. And so it's for double choir. And so there are harmonies that are passed back and forth with these swells of sound, and then this piano part that is fairly repetitive and kind of creates this scene, the monotone of the waves coming in and out, that kind of wrap around the solo singer, Mike Jones, who just does a beautiful job with this text.
You're going to hear Carla McElhenney also at the piano. So let's dive into the music. Conspirare, led by Craig Hella Johnson, and Waves by Jake Runestad.
gladness is enormous as the sea.
Just one excerpt. It's the opening track from Jake Runestad's new CD, The Hope of Loving. And the Conspirare led by Craig Hella Johnson and Mike Jones' beautiful tenor voice, the way he held some of those notes up longer than most humans should be able to.
Stunning. It's just stunning.
And Carla McElhenney at the piano. The CD comes out on Friday, August 9th. If you want to pre-order, the links are right here on the Choral Stream Facebook page. And we're also giving away a chance for you to win the CD by just joining us right there. Jake, this CD holds 15 tracks. You are writing a lot of choral music. Are you exclusively a choral composer? And what fraction of all your choral works does this 15 tracks represent?
Yeah, so Craig and I spent time figuring out what exactly would go on the disc. So it's a taste of some of my choral music, but I think it's really a good representation of the work that I do, I feel. And so it was fun to figure out just what would be the right mix of works to have variety, to have diversity, different sounds, different ideas within the CD. So that was fun to figure out. And no, I'm not just a choral composer, though I do love choral music so much. I've written a few operas, I write orchestral music, works for wind ensemble, so a real mix of things. But I really love working with text and working with singers. So.
The piano had a beautiful part in Waves. When you get a commission for a piece, does it come with we would like it to be a cappella or piano or string quartet, or is that your call? Yeah,
it depends. Sometimes the commissioning ensemble will specify. Other times they'll say, it could be a cappella, or you could add piano or maybe other instruments too. So that's a choice that I get to make. And so I think that I'm very intentional with the instruments that I choose as far as what their role is and the sound world that they create and how that plays into the journey of the piece or the colors that the text dictates.
So from Waves, which is essentially a new text by a contemporary American writer, this next piece is Spirited Light by someone who's not contemporary nor American, Hildegard of Bingen, centuries ago, an abbess in Germany, and writing an amazing text. And we'll show you the text as it comes across on Facebook. But that right there is enormous range for you, right?
Yeah. So this text is one of, so Hildegard had these spiritual visions, and she wrote about them, and they're colorful and they're just full of life. And so I tried to capture the energy, the bubbling color of this text with the music. And so it's full of driving rhythms and kind of colorful, sparkling harmonies. And so I just tried to take us through that journey of her beautiful poem.
Do you see any of that, what you just described, as you write?
Yeah, I'm kind of a visual composer, so I don't know that I'm synesthetic. I'm not necessarily thinking blue and hearing a specific pitch, but I do have kind of a movie running through my brain as I'm writing, and so I'm imagining a journey of sorts with every piece.
So let's go on the journey in Jake's brain. This piece is a cappella, but there's a couple of beautiful solos that come up from the members of Conspirare. You'll hear bass Jason Aubrey and tenor Dan Coquell. It's called Spirited Light, the text by Hildegard and the music by Jake Runestad, sung by Conspirare.
Spirited, spirited, spirited light, spirited light, spirited, spirited, spirited light.
beautiful excerpt from Spirited Light by Jake Runestad, sung by Conspirare and Jason Aubrey and Dan Coquell. And we're just sampling the music tonight. So if you're going like, but wait, and maybe you're going, Jake, but wait, the hard part's coming up. The really tricky part's coming up. You're right. And this is just a sampler menu we're giving you tonight. So, and you're entirely encouraged to click the link, make the pre-order yourself, and take a chance to win the free CD that we've got. A few of them to give you, but it's, that's the place where you'll sign up for it. We've got some comments coming in, some questions. So Jake, one from young composer, Zaim, he says he loves your choice of texts. How do you find them?
Oh, that is a process. It takes a long, long time. I think it takes me more time to find the right text and to sit with that than it does to write the music. I think the text is the most important part of any vocal music. And so it has to be singable, but it has to grab you right away, and it has to have layers you can peel back, but be easily understood in the first reading. And so I have a collection on my computer of texts that I just find all over the place, and I'll grab them and think, well, maybe I can use that one day. And so that's one way. Or I collaborate with living poets like Todd Boss or like Brian Newhouse. And I love working with writers, and we can really work to make the text exactly what it needs to be in order to say what we want to say.
This, as I was scanning through the texts on the new CD, I just thought, okay, The Hope of Loving, beautiful title for a CD, and it comes from one of the pieces. But then I thought, the word love, or lovely, or loving, I just kind of started looking through the CD, and I stopped counting at about 12 or 13 times. What's up with that?
I think that I'm drawn to topics that are important and are part of what it means to be alive in the world right now and to be human. And I think that love is a really important part of that. And there's so much going on in the world right now that we just see on the news every day, and we're not getting along, and there's violence, and this concept of love sounds so simple, but I think it's at the root of what can solve all of these problems. It's that idea of having compassion for other people, learning their story, of singing together and finding that harmony and getting to know someone else. It's being selfless. And I think that the beautiful thing about music is that it allows us to enter into that kind of relationship with someone else or with a group of other people. I love it when I go and work with a new ensemble, and especially if it's maybe a festival choir or something like that, where there are a lot of strangers in the group and they come together, and I say, look around the room, do you know everyone here? And they're like, no. And they're like, but we just sang in harmony together. And I think that's so beautiful, and I just love that aspect of choral music. So love, I think, is just a core principle of what it means to sing and to be human.
I think that's probably the best introduction we can give to the next track, which is the title track, Hope of Loving. And we've got a couple excerpts from the CD that have some beautiful, beautiful string writing. As much as a choral geek as we both are, I was really struck by how beautifully you write for strings. So as you're loving these voices, and Conspirare, I don't know who sings it better, but just check out some of this gorgeous string writing. Stephen Redfield, Caleb Polishek on violins, Bruce William viola, Douglas Harvey on cello. And this text, I think, follows perfectly what Jake was just describing. This is The Hope of Loving.
What keeps us alive? What allows us to endure? It is the hope
little taste of The Hope of Loving. That's the title track of Jake Runestad's new CD, sung gloriously by Conspirare, Craig Hella Johnson conducting. This is a Choral Stream live Facebook event. I'm Brian Newhouse from the Choral Stream. Glad to have you along. We're sharing this with folks all around the country and around the world to celebrate the arrival on August 9th of Jake Runestad's new CD devoted exclusively, the first one devoted exclusively to his choral music, Conspirare, singing. And Jake, we're getting some questions from some folks who are watching tonight. And this one aligns with something that I was... as I listened to the CD again this afternoon, piece after piece after piece, I just thought, oh my gosh, that is so beautiful. Oh, that's so beautiful. And I kept using that word, that's so beautiful. And Rafe writes, he just gave us this comment, it's out of fashion to write music that is melodic and tonal. Did you feel pressure when you were learning to compose to write in a different way, in a more postmodern way?
Well, I think it's maybe out of vogue in certain circles. But I grew up writing a lot of pop songs, and singing a lot around the house. And so as I was learning to compose, it was based on what I knew, which was the Beatles, which was Dave Matthews Band, which was Joni Mitchell. And so then when I began to write notated music for ensembles, for choir, for band, it was still within that context and with things that I had... I'm an instrumentalist by trade. I'm a saxophone player, but have sung for many years. And so, yeah, when you get to grad school, there are certain schools of writing that happen, and I think it expands the ear to listen to certain styles of music that maybe aren't what I write, but have stretched me and have helped me to grow as a musician. And yeah, I'm kind of unapologetic in my love for beauty, and I hope that when people hear the music that they find it beautiful, but that's also, there are layers and there's depth to it, which I find in the text. And so I hope that I bring that out through the music as well. And when someone studies my scores, I think there are a lot of things that they could find if they really spent a lot of time and peeled back layers of secret meanings.
Could you let us into the
some of the
workshop
secrets?
A little bit? Like is there one layer you could say, this, you may not even hear this, but I put this in there for that complexity?
Well, one example is in a piece called American Triptych on the disc, there's a movement called Reflections. And this entire movement is based on reflected ideas. So there's a center line. If you think about the musical staff, there's a center line, and all of the musical lines are reflected on either side of that. So maybe there's the piano line at the beginning, which is da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and it just descends down to low, and then comes back up in a long, wide gesture. But then there are smaller gestures of that too throughout that whole movement. So that's just one little thing that I snuck in there.
All right, cool. The next person who had a comment was Mark, and he had a really interesting question about this Wendell Berry text you discovered. It's called The Peace of Wild Things, and he's curious about how you found it, but I just want to layer on to that this word love and loving and lovely shows up so many times in the CD, but also there are oceans, lakes, trees, rivers that are all over every text around this. And here there's even the wood drake. So what relevance does a text like Wendell Berry, Kentucky poet, farmer, writer, have for you?
Oh, I love that poem so much. I don't remember where I found it originally, but Wendell is all of those things you mentioned, and also someone that believes in community and believes in prosperity of others, and really has worked his life to better his community, to better his family, and writes these texts that speak to the importance of the natural world and how we should be protecting it. And so I love this idea that we as humans obsess about what we can't control. We obsess and we have anxiety about the future. And he says, no, look to the peace of the wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. And so I wanted to try and place us at the side of a lake or a river with this piece and find that peace in that space.
We're going to pick this up about midpoint through, but I think this one really bears citing a little bit of that text you just said about, because it starts in a fairly dark place, and then we're going to find it. So you set this up. Well, how does the piece begin, the text begin?
Yeah, so when despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be. So there's this heaviness of grief. There's this tension, and my concept of the opening of the piece are these swells of adrenaline that you have when there's fear that creeps up inside of you. And so there are these swelling gestures in the choir. And then gradually throughout the piece, it begins to pass and begins to elevate, I think, and to lighten. And so actually this whole piece, going back to the last question about layers of meaning, things like that, it opens with the basses singing the main melody, which I think is quite rare. So I'm a bass, like, yeah, basses, there you go. And then the last thing that we hear in the piece is the soprano. So there is this complete motion of low to high, of dark, heavy to light, to elevation near the end of the piece. So that's a little bit of the journey for that one.
So we're arriving midpoint through. Carla McElhenney is at the piano. His beautiful new CD, Craig Hella Johnson, is conducting his ensemble called Conspirare, and new music by Jake Runestad. An excerpt of A Piece of Wild Things, a text by Wendell Berry. And I don't know if you can hear it literally right now in our St. Paul, Minnesota studios. There's a siren going by. And I'm also reflecting on some of the events that our nation has dealt with lately, mass shootings, terrific problems around race, every issue that you've mentioned, Jake. And to have a poet say, yeah, this wakes me up in the middle of the night and I fear for my life and my children's lives, and I go lie down in beauty, and then the beauty you created from that text. That feels awfully necessary right now. It really does. So Conspirare, gorgeous new compact disc. It comes out on Friday, August 9th. It's the first CD devoted to Jake Runestad's choral music. Craig Hella Johnson is the conductor, and we heard Carla McElhenney at the piano there. If you'd like a chance to win the CD, visit us right here and put your name in the hat, and we'd be glad to draw your name out. A couple more comments have come in on the comments. Questions come in from the comments, Jake. This is a good one from a young composer. Did you ever, and maybe I should put this in present tense, do you ever have doubts about your journey as a composer? If so, how do you deal with them?
Yeah, well, I think every artist probably does. I was just talking with my sister today, and I was just saying that, every time I start a new piece, I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. I just feel completely defeated. It's that blank page of staff paper on my piano, and I just think, oh, what am I going to do? And it's just a matter of putting your head down and doing the work. It's just, you just have to start somewhere, so just get started.
Yeah.
And so I tend to do that, and then the more that I work, I realize, oh, okay, this is coming together, and then maybe along the way, I'm like, oh no, it's awful, and then, and then at some point it begins to click. So it's a journey, but I think it's really just keep your head down and do the work.
So that it's not just about the muse and you, and your beret at a Bösendorfer piano. It's something about the craft and the professionalism of it as well.
Absolutely, it's just like a carpenter. You have a dream of a beautiful chest of drawers, and you have the techniques that you've learned along the way, and you find the right wood, and you begin to construct.
Is there something when you are really stuck that you say you just begin? What is that first jot that helps you get going, just get over that? Is there something you go to?
Well, I don't write anything down for quite a long time in my process. I do a lot of improvisation. So if that's just singing, if it's walking around the lake and just imagining things in my head, or it's sitting down at the piano and just improvising and trying things out, I do a lot of that before I even notate anything.
And is there ever a piece that comes, once you've baked it that way, that comes in a rush?
Every once in a great while, but that's fairly rare. It takes a lot of work to write music.
Okay, yeah. If you've got a question for Jake, feel free to pop it in the comments section. We're trying to get to as many as possible. And if you've just joined us, I'm Brian Newhouse from the Choral Stream, head choral geek here at Minnesota Public Radio and American Public Media. And if there is a more popular and more performed choral composer in America today, I don't think I know his name, and it's other than that, it's Jake Runestad, and it's such a pleasure to be here with you, Jake.
It's a joy.
And I think if there is a piece of yours, certainly at this moment, that I'm aware of that is getting performed all over the place, it's this next one, Let My Love Be Heard. This one I know has an interesting story about how you came across this really short text.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this was actually in a book of poems that belonged to my grandfather. And when he died, my grandma gave me the collection. They're these small red books with kind of gold text on the outside. And you open up, they smell like old books. They're beautiful. And I found this poem in there and bookmarked it and thought someday I'd come back to it. And I got this commission from Choral Arts Northwest and Robert Bodie in Seattle, who have been such champions of my music. And I decided to set this text. And so I did, and it had a beautiful premiere. And then a couple years later, Cal State Long Beach had lost a student in the 2015 Paris attacks, and the choir performed at the vigil for this student. And after the vigil, the choir was supposed to begin rehearsing holiday music, and it just didn't feel right to move on. And so my friend John Talberg emailed me and said, hey, can you send us this piece? We want to record it and offer it to our community as a message of love and of consolation and of hope. And so they rehearsed and recorded it in one go, and then offered it to the community. It's a beautiful recording that's on YouTube, and so that's a very, very special one that I really love. But now Conspirare has given their stamp to it, which is stunning. It's so beautiful. So I'm just honored that they included this on the disc, and I'm honored that people have taken to this piece all around the world.
Yeah, it speaks to all kinds of, I think, life situations, not just grief, but I think it can address a lot. Like the Wendell Berry piece you said, this has a particular beginning when it acknowledges loss. Can you take us into that opening line? Because we're going to pick it up about halfway through.
Yeah, absolutely. So this piece opens with a concept of grief, of loss, and an individual who is questioning that and is wishing for this love to be felt by someone that maybe is far away, that maybe is gone, and has this plea that they're hoping is lifted into the sky on the wings of angels. And so the opening is this kind of dark, grief-filled place, and slowly it gains power as I think the speaker gains power in speaking this truth and speaking this plea. And then I think probably where you're going to be playing it from is that triplet section where
that's right.
The tenors and basses repeat "Let my love be heard" over and over, gradually getting higher and higher. And the sopranos and altos have these triplets that kind of float all around like wings and ascend higher and higher, lifting that message into the sky.
This is "Let My Love Be Heard," and this is an a cappella. One of the so many of the pieces on this beautiful new recording have some piano, have some string quartet, but this one is just the voices of Conspirare all alone. Craig Hella Johnson is conducting this piece by Jake Runestad. "Let My Love Be Heard." Let My Love Be Heard, just a couple minutes of it after the angels have taken us up to heaven and the men are imploring over and over again, let my love be heard, send that message to the one I've lost. Gorgeous, riveting moment from that piece by Jake Runestad. Jake, I want to tell you that when the choir I sing in sang that in a particular church service, that our community does once a year to honor anyone who has who has died in the previous year. We set aside one Sunday to do that. And as we got to that climactic moment and there's that break, there were 2 or 3 audible gasps from the back of the church. And that was rare to hear that and to experience what music can do to give voice to someone else's powerful feeling. That's what I experienced in that moment. And it just sends chills kind of as I think about it again. And that must be an experience you get as you guest conduct some of these pieces all around the country. You hear the audience reaction, you see the choirs sing it. But yet, right as we were listening to it, you were saying, "Oh, I love how they did this particular moment."
Right.
So I guess,
Yeah.
Can you hear it fresh? Can you hear it new every time?
Yeah, and I love learning from ensembles and learning from conductors and learning about my own music through their lens.
Really?
So
Learning about your music through them.
yeah, if they bring something out or they stretch a moment or they delay a resolution that in a way that maybe I didn't consider originally, or bring out a line that is so meaningful to me. Because it shows that they really took care and they really got to know the music and found their own way into it. And so that's really fun for me, and of course it's so meaningful to hear your story and story of people and what the music means to them, and that's why I write. I write because it's not about music for the sake of music. It's music for the sake of helping someone grieve. It's music for the sake of inspiring positive change in the world. It's music for the sake of telling someone else's story that maybe we don't know about in order to foster compassion. So it's really music with purpose.
If you would like to get a chance to have a free copy of this CD, join us at that website. Put your name in the hat. My name's Brian Newhouse, in case you just joined us from the choral stream. And we're celebrating and spotlighting this beautiful new CD called The Hope of Loving, Jake Runestad's choral music. Conspirare, Craig Hella Johnson conducting. We just got another comment, and I should have started with this. Maybe it's kind of obvious, but maybe it's just, it's not. Like, how did this project come to be? Who called whom first?
Yeah, so Craig had commissioned me to write a piece for an ensemble he conducts in Cincinnati, which is on the disc. It's called Why the Caged Bird Sings. And so we had collaborated on that. And then I wrote a piece for Conspirare called Come to the Woods, which is also on the disc as a part of the American triptych. And at some point along the way, Craig and I had a conversation about doing a recording, and he was really interested in doing a full album of my music. And of course, I was wetting myself at the time, just so excited. And so, of course, these things take time, so it took several years to come to fruition. But, we talked about what would go on the disc, and we talked about how the project would come to be. But we were both really excited, and I have such respect for the work he does. I mean, they are one of the finest ensembles around, and I think that he believes in my music. So it was just a beautiful collaboration, a beautiful musical relationship.
Shout out to Delos, the label that this appears on. They're also joining us with their community as well. So you do a lot of conducting, choirs all over the country, all over the world. You've got Craig Hella Johnson and Conspirare. That's a Ferrari situation right there. Whether it's a Ferrari or something not a Ferrari, with all the experience of you wrote the piece, you're an accomplished conductor yourself. How is it for you to sit by in a recording session with like this and just let them have it?
Yeah.
And just go with it.
It's really beautiful. I trust Craig. And so it's really a gift to have that trust and to have someone who's doing this recording and being able to give the depth to the music. Now that doesn't mean that I'm not making comments of, we got to stretch that triplet, or can you delay that moment, or can we hear a little bit more of this? But everything was so much, there was so much there already. And so, it's just putting bits of icing on the cake. As far as my role in that case, so it's such a joy. But Yeah, I love working with groups of all levels and finding our own way into the music, no matter the life experience or the musical experience of those who are involved.
Another comment just came in. Love from Lucy, the Beagle, in Washington, D.C.
Yes,
Okay.
one of my favorite dogs. Thank
All
you.
right.
Thanks for that love.
Shout
Hi,
out to
Lucy.
Lucy. Yeah, good girl. Carla McElhenney is back at the piano for this next piece, and I think we both arrived at this piece, but I put them in this order because, we've heard a couple that are just silky smooth and elegant, and in this next piece, you're gonna drop us right into literally a storm. So different text, but places what's going on in Come to the Woods.
Yeah, so this is a piece that I wrote for Conspirare and Craig, and this is a setting of writings by John Muir, and John Muir was one of the fathers of our national park system. John Muir grew up in Scotland, and then Wisconsin, and then moved to the Yosemite Valley around age 30, and really dedicated his life to creating these national parks, to creating Yosemite as a national park. He started the Sierra Club, and would just walk in the woods for days on end with a book of Emerson poetry and a loaf of bread and some tea and a blanket, and would write beautifully about his experiences. And so this piece is specifically about a story in which he was out hiking and there was a storm that came, and so he decided to climb a tree in the storm, like you do, to experience it more fully. He was just an extraordinary guy, and so I think the excerpt, I haven't heard it, but I think, the storm. So at this point in the piece, the piano is raging all over, and the choir is singing about the storm. And I just imagine John Muir in the top of this huge Douglas fir tree, and he's just, soaring back and forth at the top of the tree, just feeling that electricity of energy in the air and in the wind. So that's what I tried to capture at this point in the piece.
Come to the Woods, Conspirare singing Jake Runestad's music. That's an excerpt from Come to the Woods, Conspirare, Craig Hella Johnson conducting, and Carla McElhenney at the piano. So, kids, don't try this at home. Climb a Douglas fir in a windstorm, or yeah, go for it.
Well, I'm not going to put that out there.
I was going to say, as in, have you done that?
Yeah.
Because you love the Sierras.
Yeah, I like to climb trees, but I haven't in a storm yet, so I might not do that.
Operative word was yet, I think.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. YOLO.
Jake, what is CD comes out on Friday, August 9th. May it just sprout all kinds of, new commissions for you and new concerts and all sorts of things. But really, what's next? What are you working on now that you can kind of let us in on?
Yeah, I have several works, choral works that I'm writing for this fall for groups kind of all over the country. I've got an orchestral piece that I just finished, had its premiere a couple weeks ago. That's about the wildfires in the western U.S. called World on Fire. I have a wind ensemble piece for this fall. It premieres in Atlanta in December.
Is there more instrumental music coming along?
Yeah.
And that's kind of new, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've done a lot of choral work recently, which I adore, and my roots are in the band world, and so it's fun to get back into that world and be writing for them again, which I love, and I love the variety. I love the combination, and so it's a joy to do all of it. Mm-hmm.
We are going to wrap up in just a couple of minutes here, but a couple of comments I want to just pass along, some very touching ones. Diana said, this is when we were talking about after Let My Love Be Heard, she said, this is exactly the message our nation needs during this time of terrible grief. Bless you. Jake and Conspirare. So Craig and the singers of Conspirare, if you're watching tonight, and the community who loves to listen to Conspirare, congratulations to you. And somebody, Tim, just wrote and said, I just tune in and I'm an immediate fan. You spoke so well of grief. I am a hospice worker and you deeply moved me in 2 minutes.
Wow.
So Tim and your community, this is your CD. It's gorgeous music. Some of it is really directed right to the heart and right to the spot of grief, and other pieces are as big and as expansive and stormy as that Muir text you just said. Let's see, a couple of wrap-up comments here. One more shout out to this to get your chance to win a copy of the new CD from Delos Music. I want to thank Seiji Cataldo, Randy Salas, Eric Stromstad, and James Napoli for helping us out tonight. And before we get into this last piece, I think kind of based on some of the touching comments we've gotten so far, Jake, and you've talked about the importance of love, especially now, the importance of celebrating wild things, the importance of singing together. You know, you are in your early 30s right now, and may this be 100 years from now, but what would you like to have as your epitaph?
Wow. Well, I know that I want to be buried under a tree, and maybe a tree planted, but some way that would give life. And so I think that, I don't know what the epitaph would be, but I hope that the music lives on and serves the purpose, that it helps people in some way, not just to study, but to live and breathe and engage with being human and with somehow improving the world.
Yeah. Well, you're doing that right now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jake.
Thanks.
Let's set this last piece up, which is the last track of the CD, which I think fits just exactly what you just said, Flower into Kindness.
Yeah, so before we get there, I just want to thank you all for tuning in, and to thank Craig Hella Johnson and Conspirare. It has been such a dream come true to work with all of you. This is an incredible ensemble, and it means the world to be able to hear my music come to life in the way that I envisioned. And so I'm just completely in awe and completely grateful for this opportunity. So, and thank you to the Choral Stream and Minnesota Public Radio for making this happen. It's been so fun, Brian, to be here, so thank you.
Pleasure.
So yeah, the last piece, Flower into Kindness, is an excerpt from a larger work for choir and orchestra called Into the Light. And this is a text that is really a meditation on whatever we think about that lives inside of us, that will come out in a beautiful way. And so if we put beautiful things inside, then beauty will emerge from us. And so it's a challenge to meditate, to contemplate, to live in a way that is full of love, that is beautiful, that can then flower into kindness. This is with string quartet, and then it is a 7-part canon. So the same line that's kind of stacked on top of itself and staggered, and then 4 vocal soloists as well, to create this sound world for this piece.
So I'll sign off as well. Thanks for following us on the Choral Stream. Thanks to our colleagues at American Choral Directors Association, Conspirare, Delos, and as we all celebrate and are just so pleased with the music on this gorgeous new CD called The Hope of Loving. And if you'd like to follow us, please do so. We love hearing your comments and having you watch the videos that we post as frequently as we can here on the Choral Stream. So sign up and follow us there. You're going to hear beautiful solo soprano voice, Kathleen Rich, and this string quartet, Stephen Redfield, Caleb Polishak, and Bruce Williams, and Douglas Harvey. Craig Hella Johnson is conducting Conspirare, and we've been kind of teasing you throughout this whole thing, just playing bits. But here we're going to hear the whole piece, the last selection, the final track of this gorgeous CD, Flower into Kindness, music by Jake Runestad.
I shed my words on the earth as the tree sheds its leaves. Let my thoughts unspoken flower into